It's a long way from Moscow, but for Russia, the contested waters of the South China Sea might provide opportunities for scientific collaboration, legitimacy, and major diplomatic gains, says Olga Kresnyak. The South China Sea issue does not receive a lot of attention in Russian public discourse. However, downplaying Russia's potential interest in Asia and the Pacific would be short-sighted, not only for China but for the other regional powers like Australia. Despite Russia's distance from the hotspot, there are opportunities for the country to use a science diplomacy approach in the South China Sea to strengthen its geopolitical stance. Hi, I'm Rishada Zulkifli and you're watching Spill the Tea. Historically, Russia's naval capacity and interest spread to the Black and Baltic Seas in its west, and towards the Arctic in the North Pacific in its north and east. This area has been important to Russia for centuries and remains as one of its core strategic interests. The South China Sea, naturally, has never been the focus of Russia's international affairs, largely due to its remote location, the absence of vital economic interests, and the historical presence of other regional powers like China and ASEAN countries who have a long history in the disputed waters. The official position declared by Russia's Foreign Ministry on the South China Sea dispute is to preserve the principles of international law and the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. Clearly, Moscow believes that a diplomatic approach is the only way to peacefully resolve conflicts in the South China Sea. The South China Sea is a critical commercial gateway for a certain portion of the world's merchant shipping, and hence is an important economic and strategic subregion of the Indo-Pacific. It is also the site of several complex territorial disputes that have been the cause of conflict and tension within the region throughout the Indo-Pacific. Geographically, the South China Sea plays a significant role in the geopolitics of the Indo-Pacific. The South China Sea is bordered by Brunei, Cambodia, China, Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines, Singapore, Taiwan, and Vietnam, as well as Thailand. Their recent economic growth has contributed to a large portion of the world's commercial merchant shipping passing through these waters. Japan and South Korea rely heavily on the South China Sea for their supply of fuels and raw materials and as an export route. Although the availability of diversionary sea lanes bypassing the South China Sea provides non-littoral states with some flexibility in this regard. The South China Sea also contains rich, though unregulated, and overexploited fishing grounds and is reported to hold significant reserves of undiscovered oil and gas, which is an aggravating factor in maritime and territorial disputes. The major island and reef information in the South China Sea are the Spratly Islands, Paracel Islands, Pratas, the Natuna Islands, and Scarborough Shoal. Competing claims of territorial sovereignty over islands and smaller features in the South China Sea have been a long-standing source of tension and distrust in the region. The United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea UNCLOS, which was concluded in 1982 and came into force in 1994, established a legal framework intended to balance the economic and security interests of coastal states with those of seafaring nations. UNCLOS enshrines the Exclusive Economic Zone (EEZ), a 200 nautical mile area that extends sole exploitation rights to coastal nations over marine resources. However, the EEZ was never intended to serve as a security zone, and UNCLOS also guarantees wide-ranging passage rights for naval vessels and military aircrafts.
Friendships must be cultivated. To that end, China bestowed an honorary doctorate on Russia's president last month. At a press conference for the event, Vladimir Putin praised the two countries' relationship.
China is, by any measure, our strategic partner. Our biggest trade turnover is with China.
Last year, trade between the two countries rose 27% to $107 billion. Russia sells China raw materials, while China sends back machinery, transport, and consumer goods. To increase trade, the two are investing in new transport links, like this cross-border bridge over the Amur River. It's set to open for traffic next year.
We've long said that we need to build more infrastructure. Right now, two friendly countries with a long shared border can't trade normally because they lack the proper infrastructure.
Both presidents have promised to remedy that. They've met dozens of times in recent years, and the Kremlin says they have good personal chemistry as well. President Xi's visit to St. Petersburg has been in the works for a long time.
China and Russia support each other diplomatically against anti-globalization, protectionism and unilateralism. This fully reflects the high level and special nature of the two countries' strategic partnership.
One thing unites China and Russia: their rivalry with the West. Russia has been hit hard by sanctions. China is living with the looming threat of a trade war with America. 30 bilateral agreements are set to come out of the summit, but the main aim here seems to be to send the West one message: we're just fine without you.
Both Russia and China are permanent members of the United Nations Security Council, where they often block resolutions from Western countries, especially relating to Syria and Venezuela. Another key part of the Russian-Chinese relationship is increasing military coordination. Russian TV news recently showed joint military exercises. 3,000 Chinese soldiers joined hundreds of thousands of Russian troops on maneuvers last year. The low Chinese numbers a sign that the Russians don't completely trust them yet.
We don't intend to become dependent on China. That's why we're developing relationships with Japan, Korea, the ASEAN countries, and India. Russia's Asia policy is more than just a China policy.
A sign that Russian foreign policy is based on pragmatism and can be easily adjusted depending on which way the wind blows.
DW's Emily Sherwin is following that visit in Moscow for us. I asked her earlier to tell us about the common interests that are drawing China and Russia closer together.
This is a marriage of convenience in some ways, but there is also a lot to it, a lot of basis to it. Russia and China have a lot in common when it comes to some of the main political issues in the international arena. At the moment, both support Maduro in Venezuela. Both are trying to salvage the Iran nuclear deal. Both also have a similar position on the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. They even have a joint roadmap that they have been working out, that they've been pushing on that process. They often vote together on resolutions in the Security Council, and economically as well. They've been developing ties, as we just saw in the piece. In recent years, Russia is China's main energy supplier. China is Russia's main trade partner. So even though we have been hearing a lot of rhetoric from both sides about deep friendship, that isn't just hot air. There is also a basis to it.
Okay, and we'll see what the basis comes up with today and in terms of possible trade deals. Emily Sherwin for us in Moscow. Thanks very much.
Okay, so regarding the strategy being used from Russia for the South China Sea issue, especially dealing with China, this is somewhat may sound simple, but actually quite complicated. The only option that Russia been taking action for now is avoiding the issue, the dispute. Because if they do taking sides, either Russia or probably Southeast Asian countries, it'll be messier and much trouble, because besides from China, Russia is also having a strong tie with some of these Southeast Asian countries. China insists that the UNCLOS and general international law are in parallel. Just like both wings of a bird, neither can be neglected. The UNCLOS has established a basic legal framework for the modern law of sea regime, but it is far from covering all matters concerning maritime rights and obligations. With respect to the matters not regulated by the UNCLOS, general international law will continue to play its due role. The typical examples include historic rights and the regime of outlying archipelagos of a continental state. With respect to historic rights, the law on the Exclusive Economic Zone (EEZ) and the Continental Shelf enacted by China in 1998 establishes the legal regime of China's EEZ and the Continental Shelf, in which Article 14 expressly stipulated that the provisions in this law shall not affect the historic rights that the People's Republic of China enjoys. Pursuant to this, China rights to the EEZ and continental shelf of its four Shah Islands do not prejudice the continuing viability of historic rights that China enjoys under customary international law. China's historic rights and entitlement to EEZ and continental shelf can coexist, according to the statement of the Government of the People's Republic of China on China's territorial sovereignty and maritime rights and interests in the South China Sea of 12 July 2016. China's territorial sovereignty and maritime rights and interests in the South China Sea include not only the territorial sovereignty over Nanhai Zhutao, as well as internal waters, territorial sea, contiguous zone, exclusive economic zone, and continental shelf as those provided in the UNCLOS, but also historic rights in accordance with general international law.
In several areas of the South China Sea, islands, atolls and reefs have been transformed. China claims almost the entire area and for years has been militarizing the islands, constructing remote outposts. Taiwan also claims parts of the South China Sea, along with several Southeast Asian countries, including Vietnam, which has mounted the strongest challenge to Beijing. Last month, the Vietnamese Prime Minister opened the latest Southeast Asian Leaders Summit with a strong statement on the issue, without mentioning China.
While the entire world is mobilizing its full force to fight against the pandemic, irresponsible acts and violations of international laws are still taking place, affecting the environment of security and stability in several regions, including ours.
The statement from U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo came a year after the Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague ruled that China's claims were invalid. The case was taken by the Philippines, but the verdict did nothing to slow China's assertiveness. Tensions between China and the United States have been increasing over trade, coronavirus, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and now the South China Sea.
The US statement neglects the history and facts about the issues about the South China Sea. It breaches the US government's open commitment to not take any position on the sovereignty of the South China Sea. It violates and distorts international law. It is stirring up territorial disputes in the South China Sea, which is very irresponsible.
In recent weeks, both militaries conducted exercises in the area, with the US saying repeatedly it wants to ensure freedom of navigation. Beijing suspects otherwise. Not only is there strategic value in the South China Sea, but it's one of the world's busiest shipping lanes and is believed to hold large, exploitable natural resources. China has continued to develop parts of the region largely unopposed militarily. While the US statement doesn't necessarily signal a change in that regard, it does signal a stronger stance against Beijing and will increase tension during these unstable times. Wayne Hay, Al Jazeera, Bangkok.
Honestly, most scientists and scholars suggested science diplomacy for this issue. Arms race will only make things worse, so it's best to use something similar to peace-building approach. South China Sea dispute has proven to be a major stage of conflict between the three superpowers, Russia, China, and US, in attempt to compete for superiority and dominance. In spite of the fact that it has already been stipulated in the UNCLOS, some states may find the jurisdiction somewhat vague at times, where it provides vulnerability for the particular state using the given loopholes. Using ominous threat and missiles, strength on South China Sea will only lead to disadvantage for a long term, which is why it must use diplomatic approach as much as possible. Thanks Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share this video. Bye!